So there's that, and that sounds so bleak, and I have not wanted to be so bleak, so
No,
incredibly.
I think it's important. I'm kind of on the same page with you. The other day, JD Vance was speaking at the Bitcoin conference and said a couple of things that piqued my interest in, you know, what's going on here? What are you talking about? And are we moving? I mean, is this a big shift? Are we moving to Bitcoin? Is that what you're talking about? And I did a bunch of research on it. I'd like to talk about that too. So
Oh,
I think that
okay,
goes together.
okay. All right. So for starters, I want to talk about a couple things that may sound a little mundane. I
Mm.
hope that they're not, because this caught my eye right away, and I think it's important enough to mention. I went on AARP's website. I often do that right before the show because what's
Yeah,
interesting for stuff for
yeah,
people over 50.
yeah.
First thing I see, dude, it's tick season. Be alert. This has been an issue for me with Charlie the last couple years.
Really? Okay.
As a dog person, yeah, you would be hearing about this. So the
Right.
last like 5 years, I just continuously hear how bad ticks are this year. So you better make sure you got your dog prepared. Well, gotta tell you, man, like the last year or so, it's and hearing this yet again, like every year it's worse. And I'm like holding up this pesticide, this canister, this package of pesticide I'm supposed to put on the back of Charlie's neck every month. And COVID's got me thinking differently.
Yes.
And I'm like, come on, man. Am I really supposed to put this to seep into Charlie's internal organs?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so I've been reluctant to do that. Now I don't do it in the winter. But here we are with spring coming up. My vet tells me that again. I'm doing my research on chat. But it wasn't until, dude, I'm listening to my fellow dog owners talk about, oh, yeah, like last year we went out to this park in Toledo and I picked 125 ticks off my dog
Hundred.
when I
Whoa.
seriously, and I heard this a couple times.
That's
So it's
sick.
real.
Wow.
And you know Lyme disease.
Yeah, right. That will
It's
kill you.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's horrible. So what I'm trying to say with that is, once again, I went on chat and I researched what's the best ones, what's the safest ones, flea and tick prevention stuff. And dude,
Right,
I came
right.
right back to, I believe, is it Hearts? I didn't
Yeah,
pull
I
it
think it was
up.
hearts. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's the one that you put on the back of the neck. You can also get the edible form. What's
Huh.
the freaking difference? It's still going right into their bloodstream.
Right.
But it's the highest recommended. And it's like, okay, where's your guilt going to go? Like if your dog dies from the tick related deaths, how are you going to feel about that? Or maybe in 5 years or whatever, we find out he got cancer from this tick medicine we gave him. Like, pick your poison. Well, seems to me I'm best off doing the flea and tick prevention stuff. And, that's our best science that I can find thus far.
Mm,
But I'm just saying, the tick stuff seems to be serious. So
wow.
take it
Uh,
seriously. Yeah.
and people get them. I mean, it's not just your dog. You
Yeah,
can
well,
you can
that's
get
where
them on yourself.
the
Yeah.
Lyme disease comes in, and that's just awful. They're disgusting. Seems
They
like there's
are
something else.
disgusting.
They're
Anything
gross,
that's
man,
a
creepy.
parasite is just like a disgusting creature, right?
Yeah.
That shouldn't be. Yeah.
Hey,
No. Okay, I won't do that.
maybe we should just segue straight into
Yeah.
current events, and
Let's do it.
because my stuff is more conceptual, and I want you to share what headlines you have with us. As I said, I got real quickly and easily. This is about our U.S. government, which has declared war on the people, enslaved us, and are using us, and is bankrupting America very purposefully. And we need to start talking about that, all of us, on a regular basis. I'm talking all of us kind of podcasts and everything. So I got stats on the Ukraine money laundering op that's been going on for a few years and continuing. I think that Trump has just kind of found a way to cover on that one. The Biden administration, the free money laundering clearance scandal that happened the last 2 months of his regime, and then the debt death spiral that we are into that we cannot recover from. And you're going to have a lot to say about that because you and I have talked about that a little bit more recently, and you just understand it and can talk about it a lot better than I
Right
can.
on.
So we'll go
Cool.
there. What do you
Right
got there,
on.
buddy?
Well, I think, like I said before, I think the Bitcoin thing has a lot to do with this because what the concept has to do with our fiat money that we use, or money that's
Yeah,
actually not backed by any kind of
sure, right.
tangible asset. And that's actually causing runaway inflation. So when you take a look at some of these issues that are happening, like Ukraine, it's causing an influx of fiat money into our system, which is causing inflation. And Bitcoin could be, or something like a cryptocurrency could be, an answer to mitigate this. And I want to explain how that works because I didn't really understand it. And I think everybody needs to understand this. And this goes to the economy. Economy's changing. We need to hedge our bets. That's what this is about. So I've got a little bit of education that I got over the
Nice,
last week to share with everybody on this.
nice.
And I found some pretty interesting things, Barry. So we'll talk about that. And then I have a couple other things in the news that I wanted to talk about. There's events happening in California. I want to
You
keep the
love this
continuity.
California
I want to
stuff.
keep continuity on this because I we say stories and then we forget all about what happens. And we had these fires happen several months ago, and there's a lot of repercussions that are happening that I think have to do with really the rest of the country. We saw what happened in Hawaii. We see what's happening in California. The news has forgotten about it already, but
Oh,
I've kept
yeah.
up with it. We saw what happened in North Carolina. This is why I'm going to keep following this story. I have a special interest in Los Angeles because I lived there, and I think it's important to
Family.
keep following these stories because in the news media they don't they don't do that, and I think it's important on podcasts to be able to have an alternative to see what's the ending, where does this story goes, where does it go, where does it goes.
Yeah, that's all right.
Anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So yeah, I think it's very interesting what's going on over there. So I do want to talk about that.
Okay. Did you have something else? Because you made me think of something very important.
Uh, yeah, go right ahead.
Okay. Like to give shout outs to people that have some good comments for us. And last week we had a very
Oh
popular
yeah.
video, and and it was about the FBI guys, Cash Patel and Dan Bongino, who clearly got compromised, and which is
A
a
lot of
shame.
people talking about that, Barry.
Yeah.
People seem to be awake to the fact that that was a very odd thing that happened.
Oh, it was eye opening. We keep having these eye opening things. I wanted to, there's not a lot of full regular names here, but Vegan Warrior says great stuff, new subscriber. Really appreciate that. I don't want to get into the controversy. There's just a couple. This one, Virginia Gouffre, see if I say that right,
Yeah.
seems to have been completely forgotten. And
Once again,
yeah, and I think that's important. You just made me think of that when you said, see, these news stories are getting forgotten.
they are.
And how can we forget about that poor girl who commits suicide, so to speak, being the lead witness? There may have been something else in here, but I
Oh,
really wanted to just mention that we do read all your comments and really appreciate them, and appreciate the new subscriber, appreciate the shares, appreciate the likes, very much so. It really puts a lot of fuel back into us, and we try pretty hard to keep things going here.
absolutely. Well, let's get into this economic thing that you want to
Good.
talk about
Okay.
because I think this is super important and super appropriate for
Okay, do you want me to
today.
get started with that?
Yes.
Okay, okay. So I'll go back to my notes because it's easy to follow along with that. But the U.S., the Ukraine money laundering operation. So as early as in early 2025, United States has allocated since as of 2025 has allocated approximately $182.8 billion in emergency funding to support Ukraine and the
Wow.
surrounding region since the invasion of 2022. Of this amount, about 83.5 billion has been dispersed. Remaining funds committed to future, have been either future use or have expired without being spent. I want to put something in perspective here. I like, God, I can't think of his name right now, of course, but I'll think of it in a second. But he's a comedian that talks a whole lot about this kind of stuff right here. And he's like, $83 billion. That's like we could build 83 football stadiums, NFL football stadiums across the United States. How much money would that put back into our economy? How many jobs would that create?
Right.
It's perspective because we start getting numb to what $1 billion is. $1 billion is like you can't wrap your head around it. And we're throwing it around into a war in Ukraine where we here never know what to freaking believe, but we hear that they're pulling 55-year-old guys off the street to
Oh,
put
yeah.
it,
Yep.
yeah, to go out there and fight. We are killing people constantly. We talked about 2 weeks ago about how, oh my God, what two countries is it that are having a proxy war, but it's like really cool for our military industrial complex to test their weapons against China's weapons. It's the
It
proxy
was
thing.
like Pakistan and in
It was.
India.
Yes, you're exactly right. You're exactly right.
Mhm.
And but what we don't talk about, not we didn't, you and I didn't even mention it once in that little thing. Oh, look how we're spending more money, spending more money. The military, blah. Never talk. We didn't talk at all about how many people get killed in that.
Yeah, yeah.
And
I mean,
this, yeah, all these
these
wars.
people are just lost and never heard of, and never. It's like disposable people is what it seems
You're
like.
exactly right, and it's disgusting. And
It is disgusting.
with Ukraine, when you hear about the depletion of their population, hardly ever talks about. People really don't care. And with the Israel, oh, all the rage, all the anti-Semitism, I say in quotes, going on with the Israel versus the Gaza Strip, the Pakistanians, oh my God,
Palestinian, yeah.
Palestinians there. And, it's like, when we say that this many people died, still no one seems to care. So then we say, but women and children died. This many women and children died. And for about a minute, it seems like some people care. Then we just talk about the babies. Then we put headlines up about babies dying. And for a minute, people seem to care. And so now we use all the rage right now, Merle, is genocide. We're creating a genocide over there. Oh, that works for a few minutes. So you know what? Then we don't talk about people getting killed anymore. We talk about, are you using the word genocide correctly or not? That's all people care about. Dude, this is driving me crazy. How many people need to die in order for you to call it a genocide if you need that term? I don't need that term. How many women and children need to, how many are acceptable? How many innocent deaths are acceptable? Oh, and now we got to say innocent deaths versus soldiers. Those are 18, 19, 20-year-old sons and
Right.
brothers and cousins of real life people. They're real life people. How many of them need to die for you to freaking care? I don't want my personal tax dollars going there. In my opinion, I'm going off on a rant and I'm almost
That's
done.
okay. Yeah. No, that's okay.
Because I feel like it's okay that you feel great, feel so strongly about the Israeli conquest there, or the Palestinians, fine, or Ukraine. Then donate your money. Okay, first of all, cut our taxes in half, which they can't, they won't. So that we could donate our money and we could get together drives. We can have parades and rally. It's not still the right word, and try to get a fundraiser together and send all that money over there on your own, but keep mine out of it. I don't want to be killing people over there. We have too many big unsolvable problems right here in our country. Merle, if you want to talk about more, I don't want to just read the rest of this. We have a whole lot of money that keeps going over to Ukraine. Well, I guess I'll have to talk about when we get to the Trump part, because I had a whole bunch of problems trying to get out of chat the truth on what's going on with Trump, because the media wants to frame it as, well, we had 182 committed to Ukraine. Now Trump has 360 million committed. committed to Ukraine. And he's the guy that's supposed to get us out of this.
Hmm.
But then Trump calls it, well, we signed a minerals deal. So
Yeah.
we're actually going to get minerals in exchange. Makes it all convoluted. What do you think about all this crap? I don't want anything to do with any of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a quagmire. I mean, how do you get out of it? What do you do? I don't know the answers on this one. I do believe that the best way to manipulate our way out of this whole thing is economic, and that I do think that this waging of war between Ukraine and Russia, it's a disgusting thing. You're right. There's been a lot of death, a lot of money. What did you say? 183 billion.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
So
we're
allocated to date. Yeah.
I was just looking at some comparisons here when we went to war in Vietnam. It's interesting. We were there for over a decade and we spent 167 billion. Now that's in 1975
Those
dollars.
those dollars.
Yeah, so if you
That's a
really
lot
look
of
at it,
money for
it's
back then, dude.
833 billion, but it was over a 10-year period too. So
Are
we're
you
tracking actually more expensive here
are you
in
going to give
today's
us
dollars.
Afghan numbers? Because
Let's see.
that'll make you sick. That's like three
Let's see what that.
trillion, as I recall,
The World War II was 4 trillion. It costs the United States $4 trillion
in today's
in
dollars
today's
adjusted.
dollars.
Okay.
Yeah. So how
Oh
much
my
did
God.
Afghan war cost us? Let's see what that
Yeah,
is
I
2.26
okay.
trillion. 2.3 trillion is what they're saying. So, $1 trillion
It's
is
cartoon.
unfathomable.
It
Yeah, you
is.
can't wrap your
Cartoon.
head around that. And so you're right though, Barry. These things have a complete impact on our economy. We have it's like a wartime economy right now that's feeding our it's feeding all of the military industrial complex, and people are investing in this stuff. So we're all in on this, and so I don't know how we get out of it except for taking a look at how do we starve out people that are waging war. I like the idea
I hate
of
the idea.
I,
Little
well I
kids starving?
no, no, no. I'm not talking about starving out. I'm talking about starving their ability to wage war.
You mean
Um,
economically?
economically, of course, this is what happened in the Middle East. I believe that's a part of the plan. When oil prices go down, it prevents Russia from being able to have the economic pocketbook to keep lobbing bombs over to Ukraine.
It's a good
These
point.
kinds of things actually are the behind the scenes diplomacy that can happen to prevent bloodshed. And I think that has
Now
to
you're
happen
talking.
at light speed. And I do see the Trump administration involved in that, but it seems like they've stalled. The mineral deal is a part of that. The mineral deal actually helps us to not have to pay out of our own pocketbook, and it actually brings money into the whole Ukraine factor so that they can start to wage war on their own. And then we can help them through that whole investment. And that actually is kind of a cool deal right
I don't
there
think
that can
so.
cause peace. Well, I think maybe you should look more into it but
Well,
tell me why you don't think so.
because we already had committed 182, 183 billion over there, unfathomable, which has all been money laundered if you look
Right.
into that. So now we're going to double it, but call
Well,
it a
no.
mineral deal. That's a money laundering scheme.
Look, though, however, when you talk about this, there's actually tangible assets here that can be quantified, and that's a lot easier to falsify. Oh, I had like 30 tons of gold. You can't falsify that. And you can't hide that either. It's a lot harder to hide that kind of thing than, oh, we're just going to send you $1 billion and I'm sure you're going to spend it on the right thing. I think there's a give and take. It's not
I
just us
understand.
throwing
There's
money into
something
it. It
tangible.
makes them, it puts skin in the game for them instead of our own skin all the time.
It's better than nothing, but it's still doubling down on our commitment. Wait a minute.
I
Did
think
I
it
just?
actually doubles down on their commitment.
No, I think
That's
you might
well,
be
if you
right.
have to give up your own minerals
Hmm.
in order to support the war, that's what I'm talking about. It's easy to spend America's money, not so easy to spend your own resources. This is how you actually make it so that it's not so easy for these leaders to just send billions of dollars out there and lots of human resources.
Right, right.
So to
I
me, these are the kinds of things that can ratchet down the violence. Because if you can't afford to do it, you can't do it anymore. And that's the whole thing is that military power is one thing, but you can't have military power without an economy. And so
yes.
when your economy can't support the military any longer, it makes your country vulnerable for takeover. So you can't risk that. So an economic approach to these kinds of things are the things that gets government attention, unlike the loss of human life.
Okay. There's two things about that. The first, I'm an idiot, is that I was confusing billions and millions. It's not the first time I've done that,
Well, what are
but
you talking about?
I'm going to have to revisit this. And of course, we will revisit the Ukraine thing every day, all of us. But we have 182.8 billion committed thus far. And
Right.
Trump is said to have a 360 million, not billion, million
Right.
dollar
Which is a
deal with the,
fraction of what we've been
it's
putting
still
in
it's a
there.
quarter of a
Correct.
billion, but yeah, it is compared to that. It's hard to fathom these numbers. The
No,
other
you're
thing I was
right.
gonna,
That's actually a good point, Barry.
it's a
It's
very
hard to
good point.
fathom. I mean, for us, a million, a billion, a trillion, I
Yeah,
mean, they
what do
all
you?
sound kind of the same, right?
God, isn't that sad? Isn't that a
Yeah,
sad commentary? Here's
it's
another
true.
sad commentary.
Right.
We have to hit them in the in the wallet. Like, oh, they have like no one else to go out there and die for you. Or pulling grandpa out of his sofa to go fight for you. That's still fine. That's still okay. Oh, but now you're going to have to invest some of your minerals. Now we got a problem.
Well, it's interesting though because every war works like this. Look at World
It's
War II.
disgusting.
How do we? Yes, the loss of human life does actually count for something because you still need people to carry these guns, right? So
Yeah.
that's a big factor. Germany, they ran out of soldiers and they ran out of money and they lost the war. That's what happened. That's what happened to Japan, basically. They ran out of money, they ran out of their ability to fight the war, and as a result, they lost. And so
Wow.
if you can again if you can starve out a country, an aggressive country, economically, you win. That's how you win. Now, interestingly, there's a war against the United States that's happening right now without guns. It's called unrestricted hybrid warfare. It's coming from the Chinese
Yeah.
Communist Party. They haven't fired a shot, and yet we're losing economically to them in a big way. And it's causing many changes in the United States. People are becoming disunited because of the propaganda war that's coming at us, the border war that's coming at us, the fentanyl war that's coming at us. Um, we're disintegrating as a matter of fact, and it's all economic. Look, the fentanyl war. We're losing more military age personnel here in the United States than we lost during the Vietnam War because people are ODing on fentanyl.
I just
Over
got
100,000 a year.
I got to add something real quick to there. Just a couple days ago, I heard listen to this, one of these podcasts with one of these really credible government officials say, look, the problem that we have with fentanyl right now, we exacerbated because we got out of Afghanistan, where we propped up all the poppy seed farmers, which is heroin. We
Mhm.
were importing all that heroin. We were complicit. Our government's a cartel. So we cut off the heroin, and now comes the fentanyl.
Yeah, so we do know one thing about the fentanyl crisis is that much of it's coming across our border via Wuhan, China.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
Those chemicals are sent across the sea to Michoacan, Mexico, where the cartels actually put it together and then sell it, move it across the border and sell it en masse. And so it is actually a war against the United States. It's revenge for the two opium wars back in the 1800s, where the Western nations actually forced illegal opium into China and got most of the population addicted to opium, and it
That
actually
sounds
caused
like
the
us.
downfall of the Q dynasty actually. And so this happened in the 1800s. Many of our people were
Wow.
involved in this as well. The Roosevelt family, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Delano is his mother's maiden name, and her father was a shipping merchant who was heavily involved in the opium wars, and that's where the family got all of their fortune
Of
from.
course.
And so it's interesting how all this gets infused into American history and politics, and it's also interesting how the Chinese want revenge over that. During that period of time, it was called the 100 Years of Humiliation, and this 100-year plan that they have that ends in 2020, I'm sorry, 49, is when they plan on having world domination.
Oh, right. Yeah, I know. And that's yeah, that's one of the biggest things we have to worry about. It's interesting to juxtapose that against what we have been talking about here. And what I mean by that is we've been talking about hot war and paying for it and the deaths of it versus, would you call it a warm war, cold war with China?
It's like a Cold War, right?
Yeah,
But man, most people have no idea that we're involved in a war
right.
at all.
But I think that in this day and age where like they started this decades ago,
Oh yeah,
where technology isn't like we have so much more awareness now. And we're more sophisticated, much more sophisticated now. First of all, we need to stop giving them our technologies. Okay, we're stupid enough to push all of our tech companies over there where they steal all of our proprietary information.
well, it's a
We're
law. You have to, if you're going to do business over there, you have to give up your IP.
okay, that
Why
sounds
would you do
great.
that?
Yeah,
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 yeah.
I'm in.
Unbelievable. So there's that. But my point with the China thing is I think we could use this. We kind of touched on this last week or the week before, but I think we could use because we're talking about Africa, and
Right.
yeah, they're
Last week,
going in there
yes.
building infrastructure and all that,
For the
and
Belt and Road Initiative, right.
correct. And I was kind of going off the cuff saying, and we're probably doing stuff like this, but if we could stop using everything as a money laundering scheme and actually put our money into the right places, if we could find the pockets of people that are the pockets of society over there that are ready to rise, that you could put a little bit of education and money in, and they'll start to flourish and grow. Maybe we can counter that. I know that China, who is using what faux capitalism, they're using our technology and our stuff and looking like they're growing exponentially. Whereas they're doing most of it from stealing. I know that almost all
Okay.
the Chinese people over there would rather be here than there. They don't want to still be in an authoritarian type of government.
Correct.
If we can use instead of going hot war, never want to go there. If we could use these same kind of tactics against them, they will burn out themselves. I believe.
I see that too. And I think the tariff thing has everything to do with that. I think the tariff thing that Trump is doing, and of course, now all these district judges are putting injunctions on the acts, it proves that it's working because these district judges aren't playing for America. It sure doesn't look like it. And
Right.
they're coming out of the woodwork and they're stopping every one of these types of tariff plans. Look, China came with hat in hand and said, okay, enough. We just lost 40 banks. We got 360 more that are about to fall. Let's make a deal. So the tariff thing worked. But now all of these judges are trying to stop it and are stopping it, actually. The Trump administration had an injunction just this past week to stop the tariffs, and they did an appeal, so they've got a few days left on this whole thing. But this is all part of the war. This is a war, and a lot of it is happening internal with our own people that are fighting for, or they're fighting against America, is what they're really doing. And it's a crazy thing to see.
That's true.
It's almost a good thing that this is happening the way that it's happening. And I'll say it this way, and it's weird that I'm saying it this way, but if these people if they weren't exposing themselves the way that they're doing it right now, we would have no idea what they're doing in the background. And this is actually bringing to light the constitutional crisis that we have, where lawfare is being used to prevent a duly elected administration from doing anything productive at all. And now we're seeing that
Yeah.
there's sort of a cold civil war happening. Not sort of. There is a cold civil war happening here between Republicans and Democrats. And don't be fooled. The civil war that we had in the 1800s was between Republicans and Democrats.
Well, okay, lot there. First of all, Jimmy Dore is the comedian whose podcast I really like, who
Yeah,
says a lot of good stuff politically. He's very moderate. He's a Democrat, but boy does he give it to the Democrats. Oh
yeah,
boy, boy.
like Bill Maher.
Yeah, I'd say he's more bear than that. But Bill Maher, they're going to kick him out of the. They're going to kick him right out like they did Rogan, and be like, "We need a Joe Rogan. We need a Bill
That's funny.
Maher." You know what?
That's
Because they
funny.
always do that. But so there is a few things that I wanted to hit on there, and boy, I wish I could remember all of them because the very last thing you said, I wanted to respond to. Very last sentence you said. Do you remember? All right, it's fine. We'll get back to it. One of these, though, was this is going back into another thing about technology being stolen in China and all that. I think it was on the latest Sean Ryan show that I was listening to. Maybe. There's Larry Vickers, 20-year veteran of the U.S. Army with extensive service in special forces and all this. Maybe it was him. Well, we're saying that uh, China is reported to have already have a base on the backside of the moon. We never see the backside of the moon
I've heard
because it
that.
doesn't spin,
Yeah.
and that the moon is very rich in, is it called hydrogen 3? I think it is. Hydrogen 3 is extremely rare on Earth, and yet it is the one thing that could cool quantum. Oh boy, I remember I wanted to say something about that. Quantum computers correctly. Like we have such a hard time. They got to run super cold in order to work at all.
Right,
And we
right.
have a hard time with that. Anyways, hydrogen 3 is super valuable.
Cold. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, it's almost more than gold. And the moon is rich with it. So
Yeah.
mining the moon. And so if China already has a base on the moon and we can't even see the back of the moon via a satellite that we currently have, in other words, God, this gets into so much. Okay, I'm going
Well,
to
this
spit
was
out.
one.
Wait, because I don't want to forget
Okay, go
again.
ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Crypto, quantum computing will crack every one of those codes. So crypto is, we got to talk about that. The space race. So there's the big iron golden dome or whatever that Trump wants
Right,
to sell us now.
right, right.
That's another way to give money to the military industrial complex. But it looks like, hey, we're doing, but at least you're not killing people. I guess there's that. Want to sell me on something that I would rather put that money in? Space Force. Better
I
freaking get
think
on that right now.
it's funny because that's what I've been wanting to say this whole
Oh,
time is it was
okay.
General Quest that was talking about this as well when we were talking about alternative energy sources and that
Yes, that was
the
him.
Space Force has people are only looking at it from a military aspect. Like, okay, we need to have the high ground. That is ABCs of military, right? But what he was talking about is the potential of harnessing all this energy, this free energy in space, and being able to actually beam it down to Earth wirelessly, and that there's an abundance of this. He talked about the potential of China having a base on the backside of the moon for this exact thing, and that we need to be doing exactly the same thing, and we need to be the dominant force, because if we're not, that means that China wins and they inflict their anti-human rights on the rest of the world, and we're slaves. And so this is very, very important. And I feel like what Trump was talking about necessitates having a space force. Like, how are you going to cover the whole United States like that without having some type of space oversight? So I kind of feel like they play into each other. Um, but what are the repercussions of having something like that over top of us? This is another thing that we have to think about. Let's not forget, I like Donald Trump, but I see him as extremely fallible as well. It hasn't escaped me that it was him that came up with the whole concept of warp speed, and under him, they closed down all of our businesses in the country. That's so anti-American. I can't even believe it. So I've got my eye on him. And so if you put this satellite system or whatever it is above us, is this thing going to be tracking me? Is it going to be able to film me wherever I go? And we have to think about this kind of stuff, Barry, because they
That's interesting.
because of this.
Yeah.
I didn't think this was going to be a weapon against me, but it is now. And so what kind of weapon against me is this? Uh, Inside of every government's DNA is the
Control.
strong desire to control everything about my life.
You're right. And
And
so,
that's anti-freedom, anti-liberty. Liberty. Go ahead, Barry.
dude, you just brought up a really good point that escaped me. And by the way, that Quest catch was really good because I screw up everybody's name and who I listen to. We were talking about how panicked you can get if you think about China has a base on the moon, and
Right.
you get them up there with a couple satellites that can start taking out our satellites at will. We're done. That's
That's
it.
that's
We're
it.
done. So
That's
we
right.
start talking, well, the US needs that satellite up there immediately. But you threw the danger side of that on that. That's an eye
Yes.
opener that we don't talk about.
Well, here's something I was reading about too, is when the Sputnik came up, what was that, the end of the 50s? The United States was terrified because now there's something you can't even see. It's in space and it's above you. What if they drop a nuke from up there? That's what they were thinking.
Oh,
But I mean, really, in today's day and age, they floated a balloon over top of us, and they were the
yeah.
Chinese, and they were able to capture all kinds of radio information and secret information. What if you put something up there permanently? What if there already is something up there
Think there are
permanently?
plenty
You
up
know,
there.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I know they have satellites that can look at the mole on the back of my neck.
Yep.
All
Hmm.
right. So, what else are they doing? I'm sure we would be horrified if we found out everything that they're doing right now.
Well, you're absolutely right. First, you should get that mole on the back of your neck checked. There's
Yeah,
a
I
lot
don't
of
really
skin
have one.
cancer going
I
on.
had that taken
Um,
off.
but back to the point about what you said about, this is how we can be corralled and scared into encouraging our government to have this kind of surveillance over us, this kind of
Right,
control
that's it.
over us.
For our own
But what else
safety,
do we
right?
do?
It's
Yeah,
always for that. It's always
it
it's always
is.
for our own good. Oh, this is going to protect you. Really? This thing around this rope around my neck is going
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
protect me?
But that's like I kind of like came up with this illustration in my own head for the Soros effect, which I see used in so many different ways, and it's so simple. Imagine that you're on a deserted island or something with 20 other people, and you're running around being chased by lions all the time, and over here, over there, and they get one of you every now and then, and you're just always running. And finally, you see some natives that are like, guys, we got this big box right here. It's safe. Come on in. And you're like, hell yeah. And we go in there and they close the door. And you're like, oh, thank God we're safe from the lions. But now what?
Yeah.
Now you're
You gotta
captives. You're
get
slaves
inside
of
the
the,
box.
yeah.
Yeah. That's
That's
a
the
good point
Soros
right there.
effect. That's your authoritarianism. Oh, you're going to
Uh-huh.
save us with your authoritarianism. Thank God.
Okay. So now that you're saying that, I just want to bring up something because you know how we like to listen to James Lindsay on new discourses.
Yeah, he comes and goes, man. He gets a little crazy.
He
But yeah,
does,
go ahead.
but he was talking. I was listening to a podcast. It's called "The Woke Rights Elite
Hmm.
Coup
Think
Inside
I
the MAGA Civil War."
think I listened
And
to it.
you brought this up before, the woke right?
It's
What is that? And so I
that's a
started listening to this and I'm like, uh-oh. This is this is scary stuff right here that woke. Okay, so let me give a thumbnail on this and then let
uh-huh,
me get your feedback
uh-huh.
because it seems
Mine's
like
simple.
we're experiencing this in a big way. But woke, what does woke mean? It's basically that you're awake to this power structure of the oppressed versus the oppressor versus the oppressed,
Yep.
right?
Hmm.
You've awakened to that. That's what wokeism is actually. But that can happen on the left and on the
Yep.
right. And so it's pretty easy for us to see what it looks like on the left, right? We talk about
It
it all the
is.
time, but on the right, it's not as easy to see. But if you take a look at what we're dealing with here under the Trump administration, the concept would be this, that we are so disheartened by what happened over the last 4 years that we have to change everything about what's happening in our society. And what we're going to do for your own good is we're going to take away your rights in these areas so that
Yeah.
we can implement the justice that you deserve. But the problem is that
Well
you
said.
never get your rights back.
Never.
And it's the same thing, only with a different flavor. It's you're still having ice cream, right? It's just a different flavor of that ice cream,
Well said.
and the ice cream makes you sick. And so
Hmm.
this is what's happening. You're still under tyranny, but it's like the difference between USSR tyranny and Nazi tyranny, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They're the same ice cream. There's the same, it gets to the same ends. You know, you are subjugated,
Uh-huh.
but it just uses a little bit of different language.
At the end of the day, you just want to know where you're starving less. I'll pick that
Yeah,
one.
exactly.
You're going to be
Well, you're
starving.
slaves in each one of these situations, right?
It's
It's
very
like,
true.
do you want to get whipped with the blue whip or the black whip?
Uh,
You know,
uh,
it's just,
with Lindsay on that, boy, he lost me a lot on that, and I really, really respect him. He's way smarter than me, so maybe he's just so
me
smart.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
maybe he's just so smart I don't understand him. But when he started explaining wokeism and woke right, I thought he went way off the rails, made it way too confusing, way too convoluted. Because to me, it's weaponized identity. Woke is weaponized identity politics. That's all it is. If you want to get your way, you call the other side a racist. That's all it is. Don't make it more
Well,
complicated than that.
yeah, it in fact, actually, I thought as I listened to his essay, he was actually trying to make it as simple as possible, but he's just not a simple guy,
No,
you know.
he's not. He's not.
But I did find it interesting that wokeism can be on the left and the right. And now that I understanding, you know, woke is really all about waking up to this power structure
Mhm.
of oppressor versus oppressed.
That's
And that's
exactly
really
right.
what communism is all based on.
That's Marxist. Yeah, that's a
It's the
Marxist playbook.
religion. It's the religion of Marxism is
No, you're
actually what.
absolutely right. And with that, so how is the right doing this? Calling everybody an anti-Semite if you don't want to give money over to Israel. I mean, that's the way I see it. And convoluting Zionism. Like if you're not into Zionism, then you're an anti-Semite. Okay, just simplify the living hell out of that. I mean, as I understand it, Zionism is just believing that Jewish people need their own state, need their own country. And that's all there is to it. Doesn't mean, so you debate that. Are you pro Zionism or are you not? Doesn't mean that you hate Jews. It means, well, I don't have my own country. I mean, like, I'm a white person. Everybody will, I mean, not everybody, but a whole lot of people on the left in America will want to kill me for saying that. I don't have my own country. I gladly share it with everybody.
Yeah, I think there's more to the woke right is I agree to a point, but I also think that it involves like if it's really woke, it's about this limiting of your freedoms in order to support that power structure, right? Because in the end, it is a function of the communist ideology, right? The real purpose of the whole thing is to mute your liberties and control you. That's what this is really all about. the the whole woke ideology is a way of brainwashing the general public into giving away your liberties to a central state is really what I how I see how wokeism is actually working, and it really is to as it's introduced to America, it's really here to take away our American way of life and substitute it for a very controlling elite group over the general population. And we're seeing it as we fight each other, the power structure is consolidating above us and basically calling all the shots.
I see
Now,
what you're saying in the grand
yeah,
scheme of things. At the ultimate end of things, I do see that. But I'm talking about in the general population on a day to day basis, the people that adopt the term woke, which used to be, I'm woke, this is a big compliment on me. I'm more awake than you are. Now it's a pejorative. I'm not woke. Well, I don't know what woke means. How that happened. Well, so
right.
to me, and when I talk about that, how that has transpired, that's what I mean is I want more rights than you. So I'm going to call you a racist if you say I can't have those.
I see what you're saying. And yeah,
That's how it
I
gets
totally
started. And
see
then
that.
you're extrapolating that and talking
Yeah.
about how that's used at the national level.
Yeah. Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah.
All
Hey,
right. Go ahead.
I want to move on
Mhm.
to this whole concept of crypto and how that plays into
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
whole thing that we're talking about here. Because the way I see the United States right now and where we are in history, and we talk about this all the time, is that there is an attack on our way of life here, and we can see it. The economic power is ebbing away from the United States, and as I was making a point earlier, is that economic power trumps everything, even military power. So, in order
Yes.
to bring the United States down, it has to be brought down economically. Well, this past week, J.D. Vance was at it was the Bitcoin conference that they have every year, and it's a pretty big deal for Bitcoin, and it's a pretty big deal that our vice president was there. And as a matter of fact, Trump, before he was elected, was there last year, making some pretty big statements about Bitcoin. And so let me just read a little bit about this, and then I want to go into my question on this is that he was saying on the stage, I'm just going to read. I spent enough time in Silicon Valley to recognize the difference between good technology and that boosts our productivity and makes our lives richer, that grounds us in the real world and complements our day-to-day lives. That's the good technology, but there's also some bad technology out there. And when it comes to crypto, I think the last several years have made it clear that we're talking about genuine ground up innovation, one that's already improving the well being of tens of millions of our fellow citizens. Then he goes on to say, I also feel like there's an incredibly value conservative element to crypto technology, and that's as a hedge. Crypto is a hedge against bad policy making from Washington. No matter what party is in control, it's a hedge against skyrocketing inflation, which has eroded full savings rates of Americans over the last 4 years. So I got to that part, Barry, and I was like, wait a second. How is it that crypto can be a hedge against inflation? And I just want to ask you, like, do you know? Because I was confused by that. Do
Yeah,
you have
I'll say some convoluted stuff that kind of gets a little bit of the way there. It's kind of like when I talk about quantum computing, or there's quantum communication, which is fascinating. I kind of got it, and then it kind of slips away from me because it's complicated. And then when I go back and I read about it again or listen to a podcast about it again, it's like, oh, yeah, yeah, I got it. Here's what it is. And that kind of slips away from me.
That's
So
exactly how I
can,
feel.
so here's what I know about crypto, and I've watched a lot of specials on it and all that. The proponents of it think that it would save us economically because it can't be manipulated, and therefore you can't have inflation, because it'd be like going back to the gold standard, one for
Uh,
one. It is what it is. It's a one or a zero, and that's what there is. All there is to
it's
it.
really good, Barry. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I'm good at making things simple because I am simple.
I'm a
Uh,
simple guy.
So what I said earlier about here's the big thing, man. People say, and I understand this, is that when quantum computers are more stable, so the reason that crypto is so great for us and uncorruptible is because how secure it is with its extreme passwords. But it
Yes.
can't stand up to quantum computers.
That's
Quantum computers,
nothing's going to stand up to that.
right?
That's
So
the
it won't.
problem. So we're going to have to figure something out. And this isn't that's important, Barry, because there's no real answers to this. But I do think it's interesting that the Trump administration is looking at this. Last year, Trump talked about having a Federal Reserve of Bitcoin, sort of like we have a Federal Reserve
Mhm.
of oil. We want that's something now we haven't heard from that, and they didn't talk about that. JD didn't talk about that this time, but it's interesting that they are so high on Bitcoin. And here's some of the things to think about. So, one of the big ways that this works, there's four big deals here. One is decentralization versus central policy mistakes. That's something you were just talking about. There's an inflation protection aspect. I'm going to go into these, a monetary sovereignty for individuals aspect, and then skepticism of institutions. Let me just cover this. First of all, the traditional currencies that we're dealing with right now, the US included, is
Archaic.
controlled by central banks
Oh,
and
that's the
influenced
worst.
heavily by government fiscal policy. Okay, remember we talked about deficit spending, spending money that we don't have, so they print money. That's called fiat money. It's not
Right.
backed in anything, and it's
It's called
highly
inflation.
conducive to inflation.
Yeah.
When policymakers engage in excessive money printing or deficit spending, it can lead to inflation, which reduces the purchasing power of savings. But crypto as a hedge idea, Bitcoin and similar cryptocurrencies operate outside of centralized control. They're fixed or algorithmically determined supply. Like Bitcoin has 22 million coin cap. A 22 million coin cap is meant to prevent inflationary devaluation, acting like a digital gold, just like you were saying, Barry.
Hmm.
And so this is what's really attracting people. It's also a hedge against inflation. So the United States, over the past 4 years, has experienced a huge inflationary period, and it actually peaked at 9% in 2022, eroding our
God.
our ability to have a real savings account. Even
Hmm.
with these high interest rates, many savings accounts still didn't keep pace with inflation. So the crypto as a hedge idea is seen by some as a store of value that can outperform fiat currencies over time. I think that part's really important, the over time part, because as you're going to see, short-term gains are kind of crazy when it comes to crypto, and I'll explain why. It's highly volatile. This is similar to how gold is viewed during times of dollar weakness. A store of value is a term that they use for gold as well. It stores your value. For instance, a $25 gold coin back in 1865 could buy a suit. Today, that same coin, you cash it in, it'll buy a full suit for you. It's
That's
retained
interesting.
its value. It's
I
a
haven't
store of
heard it
value,
explained that way before. That's a perfect explanation. And
isn't it?
by the
It's
way, when you listen to the kind of podcasts that I listen to, you hear a lot of commercials for buying gold.
gold. Yep,
Hmm.
exactly. Okay, so monetary sovereignty for individuals. I think this is really important because what we saw in Canada a couple of years ago with the trucker strike was that they froze their assets. So they don't have sovereignty over their assets.
All right.
And of course, we're all concerned about that. Like look at what's happening in China with the social credit score. Crypto enables people to self-custody their assets and transact without intermediaries or governmental interference. In times of economic mismanagement or financial repression, frozen accounts, capital controls, crypto can provide an escape hatch. A real-world example, in countries like Venezuela and Argentina, citizens use crypto to avoid hyperinflation and currency collapse.
Wow.
Pretty interesting
Yeah.
stuff, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, skepticism of institutions. The broader sentiment on both left and right is growing skepticism of the centralized institutions, including and especially the Fed and Treasury. And they should be in the spotlight.
Uh-huh.
What they're doing is criminal.
Yes.
Crypto appeals to those who see government missteps, whether due to overregulation, corruption, or incompetence, as systemic. JD Vance reflects this populist skepticism by framing crypto not just as a financial instrument, but as a political counterweight to entrenched interests. Okay, but there's some caveats here, and one of them is volatility. Crypto assets are highly volatile and not ideal as short-term inflation hedges. And I'm going to tell you why in just a second. Some correlations here. During the market panic of 2022, crypto has at times traded like a risk asset and not a safe haven. In
I
other words,
understand.
you get that. I didn't get it. I had to look that up. What that meant is that during tough times like 2022, safe havens are not going to lose their value, but risk assets will. And that's what happens to crypto during this 2022. Their value went down along with everything
Let me
else.
explain it even simpler. Crypto's value is just 100% based on perception, just
That's
like the stock market.
speculative.
Yeah,
That's what it is. It's
like the
all
stock market.
speculative,
Mhm.
exactly like the
So, to
stock
your
market.
point, the shit hits the fan. Well, get my money out of crypto. You get scared. Yeah, it's like the
That's right.
stock
It's
market.
it's
Yeah.
a highly emotional type of a platform here. And then there's regulatory uncertainty. Crypto's still at the mercy of Washington's decisions, whether it's the SEC lawsuits or legislations. Crypto
Wow.
is not a solidly accepted platform right now, which makes it a bit unlike gold. The Vance's statements then appeals to those who feel let down by the economic status quo. The idea is that crypto offers a parallel system, decentralized, deflationary, and sovereign that protects individuals from consequences of government mismanagement. Okay, so this all sounds almost too good to be true.
Yep. Hmm.
So this is my having worked in a carnival game. There's some there are some
I can
similarities that
reuse
it
my
sounds like
graphic right now.
you gotta do you have a carnival game
I
graphic?
Yeah, you didn't see it. I got you at a
Oh, I
dime
love
pitch.
that.
Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay, so but here's the thing, Barry, that then it brought up this. Well, I heard Joe Biden talking about digital currency and crypto all the time. Do you remember that?
No, I don't.
No, okay, because I realize that he can't be talking about the same thing. And here's the deal is that central banks are actively developing their own digital currencies known as central bank digital currencies.
Oh.
Um, these
Oh.
these are between the central bank digital currency and Bitcoin, they're fundamentally different in
Hmm.
opposing ways.
It's my
So
debit card.
So here's the deal: is that under they call them CBDCs, or central bank digital currencies, or digital dollars. Those are controlled by the central bank. So you're not getting out of the whole deficit spending thing. This is actually a glorification of deficit spending and more, where Bitcoin is decentralized and there's no group of people that control this. The monetary policy is subject to inflationary policy stimulants under the digital currency under the central banks, but under Bitcoin, there's a hard cap at 21 million. That means they can't infuse into it, devaluing your coins.
That's
Surveillance. Go ahead.
Oh, I just want to say, just bottom line for me, and it has been from the start. I could have started with this statement, and I'll end with this statement. It eliminates banks. The banks.
Yes. The intermediary that's
They're the
using.
world's population's enemy.
Look, the banks are using something called fractional reserve lending. And all that is it's fake money. If I put $100 into the bank, they turn it into $100 extra of checkbook money. In other words, $200 that they loan out to somebody else. Where did the other $100 come from? They made it up. It's another
Yep.
way of absolutely causing inflation. All banks are doing it across the world. It should be illegal,
Right.
but it's not. And so this cuts that out. Very good, Barry. I love that. The trust model requires trust in government institutions under the CBDCs, but with this model under Bitcoin, it's trustless, verified by cryptographic proof. You don't have to trust anybody. It's right there. It's in those coins. It doesn't move. The innovation goal for the central bank is efficiency, control, and compliance. They want to be efficient, they want to control you, and they want you to be
Oh
compliant.
yeah.
Remember how they
Hmm.
wanted to track everything that you spent above
Yep.
$500?
They're
Now they
still
can
trying.
track everything that you spend, period.
Sure. And
That's what
then
they
you're going to be
want.
incentivized. Your money's going to go a little bit further if you're doing the right things, and could be
Right.
a little bit choked up. You're not going on vacation if they don't like
This
what you're
is the
saying.
easiest way to implement the social, what is
Credit
it?
system,
The
social
social
credit.
credit. Yeah, social credit system. All you have to do is press a button now. Hey, Barry, you've been a bad boy. You're not allowed to leave Cleveland now, or
Uh-huh.
you're not allowed to have chocolate milk anymore,
Look at
whatever
look
it
at the
is.
look at how we were being manipulated in that way at a beginning scale, at a smaller scale by Google during COVID.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. They had us in a box, just like you
Well,
talked
they
about earlier.
incentivize you with their algorithm and they disincentivize you by just choking you out completely. If you're saying things and all they had to do was call it, it increases vaccine hesitancy.
Mhm.
See, all you need to do is create a buzzword that starts working for you. Which,
That's
by the,
funny.
I want to move towards this, but I want you to pick back up where you are. I want you to incorporate. I want you to lean towards into this. Is the buzzwords that what I for me what I want to start talking about on a regular basis is what is where we're going is so I heard somebody say, I actually have his name down here, so I could go to that. But he says that we are on track to go into 22 more trillion dollars in debt within 5 years. And all of this is unsustainable. Somebody used the word, I don't remember the word, I couldn't find it. I was searching for it before the show, that is talking about how we're going into a mountain in a
Mhm.
fiery ball. This country in this financial situation we're in, currently $37 trillion in debt, which we can't even fathom what that is. And all the stupid crap we're doing with our money right now that we've talked about through this whole show, unsustainable. Trump, says he's going to rescue us in whatever ways. It's not going that way. I want to start developing the words, find out what they are. If not, we'll make them to say, hey, we are a fireball going into a mountainside financially. And how are we going to turn it around? This needs to be part of our conversation,
Yeah,
everyone's conversation
absolutely.
every day.
Oh, that's absolutely right. And you take a look at what Elon Musk said just before he resigned this week, is that he was talking about the big, beautiful bill that's in
Yeah, yeah,
Congress right now, and he's saying it's going to add like $4 trillion to our
yeah,
debt. And he's
yeah,
like, "Look, I just went through Doge, and I was working my butt off trying to save the country money, and now you've taken that and you're going to spend even more."
yeah.
And so he's frustrated by that whole thing. But here's the secret, Barry, is under our Federal Reserve System, as you and I both have learned, the debt machine has to keep, you have to keep throwing, it's like a locomotive. You have to keep throwing
Cool.
coal into that fire. You got to keep throwing more debt into it, or the house of cards will collapse. And so they all know this. The system itself is set up as a debt machine. You can never get out of debt. In order to get out of it, you got to change the system. The system is set up to, as we said in this, it's systemic. The system is set up that way. The Federal Reserve did this on purpose. Could Bitcoin be a way out of this? I don't know, is the answer to that. It
Hmm.
could be, but
Until
right now
quantum
there's so
compute.
many uncertainties that we can't. It's like trying to lean on a broken leg. We can't do it yet until we know some more things. And but these are really great points. And to your point at the beginning of the show, we have to look at our economy and start figuring out what we're going to do. Is this the answer? The administration that we're in right now seems to feel very strongly that it is. And I'm bringing up central bank digital currencies because every country in the world is talking about this that's under central banks right now, which is every country in the world.
Uh-huh.
And so we have
Held
to get out of
hostage.
this whole system. The central bank digital currencies, you're looking at programmable I'm sorry, let me just say this.
Mhm.
These CBDCs do not solve the problems Bitcoin was built to address. In fact, they actually reverse them. So, under the category of programmable money, CBDCs could allow governments to control how and where you spend, expiration dates on stimulus funds, or blocking purchases in certain stores. They can surveil you. Every transaction could be monitored. They can freeze your assets. They can also, inflation still applies. So CBDCs are digitalized fiat. They're the same thing, and
To be
this is how
clear,
Bitcoin gets away from it. I have an analogy. Let me just say this.
well, I wanted to
Think of
clarify
it
something.
this way. Wait, and
Mhm.
then you can clarify, but let me just come to this. Think of it this way. I love this. If Bitcoin is a lifeboat off of a sinking ship, CBDCs are just a fancier digital version of the ship that was still sinking.
Yeah, yeah, okay. So what I wanted to say was you were describing the bank's proposed counter to Bitcoin.
Right.
You didn't
That's right.
preface it with. I wanted to clarify that.
Well, it's
Um,
really the governments who are in
yeah,
cahoots with the banks, because the central banks are a part of the Federal Reserve, even though it's not a part of the government. They're pretty much attached at the hip.
I
That's how
know.
deficit spending
Oh,
happens.
that's just, it's a
Deficit
creepy
spending could not
relationship.
happen without the central bank.
Right. So there's a couple things that I want to continue to explore in digestible bites. And that's going to fall on you primarily because when we do too much, I know you lose me. And what I mean by that is it was nice the way you touched on,
Fractional reserve lending. Yep.
yeah, yeah, fractional reserve lending. You just started talking about that
Yes.
a little while
Yes.
ago, which is really cool that you don't hit us with too much of that at one time because it's overwhelming and
It
confusing.
is overwhelming. And it can also cause people to become very angry. It's irritating
Oh,
to learn these things.
it'll
And
make you
sometimes
angry.
I've been attacked just telling somebody this. It's not me. I didn't make up fractional reserve lending.
Right. I understand that. So we need to slow drip that a little bit more so we understand it. And then the big question that I have, and I think you and I are going to do what we do, and we're going to start piecing this together over a little bit of time here. The question that I have is, all right, we're going to, even if it's going to crypto for a while to get out of it, we got to get rid of these banks. We got to get off the system and we got to shove it down their throats, is what we got to do. What happens with all of our debt? Because frankly, here's what I think. I don't think it's our debt.
I
They
don't think
gave
it
our
is
money
either.
away, they took it.
I mean, seriously, Barry, if you really look at how we got into debt, it was the Federal Reserve Bank prints money and gives it to us. But how do we get the value out of that printed money? It's from the existing money that's out there. You have to take the value of a portion of the from every dollar, a portion of that existing money goes into this, which devalues the existing dollars out there. So, like you said, they stole it from us.
Mm-hmm.
Now they want us to pay back what they stole from
You're
us.
right. You put it
It's
perfectly.
it's like I remember I had three bicycles stolen out of my garage. Okay. So what if I were to find those guys and they said, okay, let's settle up. You owe us six bikes.
that's that's a perfect way to put it. You did that right off the cuff. That was perfect.
I mean, that's what's happening. Right? And they were like, okay, here's your six bikes. I want some more lumps.
Well, you know what? That's a good South Park cartoon. So
I think
basically,
it is.
we need to somehow tear down the institutions that have done this to us and take our money back.
That's it. That's it. Because they're the robbers, they're the pirates.
Right.
And we've been appeasing the pirates this entire time.
You're
And
right.
and I'm done. I don't like pirates. Let's I want to live my own life. I don't need them as we talked about ticks earlier. That's a parasite. These people are just like giant ticks. We need to get the medicine to wipe those ticks off of us and let them just dissolve.
And there you have it. See, if we wind up the show right now, it's like a really good professional comedian. You did your callback at the end and tied it all together, and you're like, yeah.
And that's why I like to procrastinate.
Right, right. No, you did a really good job right there of explaining that. So now there's two things that we need to do. We need to wrap this in the right language so that when we talk about how we're trying to get out of this mess and correct things, we have the terminology that we all understand and
Right.
speak to.
Yeah.
And the other thing is we need to have the conversation. Meaning, when we start, we force the conversation with our elected officials. Our elected officials are worthless, but that's what we got right
Well,
now.
well, here's the thing too, Barry. I agree with you, by the way, for the most part. But I really believe it's the stuff we're talking about right now that we, the people, I keep bringing that up, but we, the people, need to understand this. Like, I didn't understand this about Bitcoin
Uh huh.
until earlier this week. I studied it out, but now I get it. We need to be sharing information like this so that we have this knowledge base so we can't be deceived by these pirates any
Yes.
longer. And
Yes.
it's just like once their power, the pirates, let's call them, their power is our ignorance.
It's always
And
been our
so
government. That's our
the
government's
more,
power.
yes, and the more we can become educated on their wiles, the more we can here's what's going to happen is it's going to be kind of an us against them thing where it's
Uh
like, wait
huh.
a second, we can't have you doing this, and that awareness will cause us to stand firm. I've been doing some studying about the Revolutionary War. I love the period of time,
Mm,
and this reminds me, everything happening right now reminds me of the soil
hmm.
of that time. And
Yes.
the people they do, right before the Revolutionary War is called the period of enlightenment. And so during that time period, people were doing a lot of reading and talking to each other about what they were learning about societies and how to correct some of these issues in societies. And it caused them to be very aware so that when these things, when time and opportunity intersected, they were prepared to put together something that actually worked. And I
Yeah.
think we're in a very similar time right now where we have to really, great minds have to come together. Like, Barry, I wouldn't say I have a great mind, but I'm okay.
Yeah, you
I
do.
think
Yeah.
you and I have been able to get together, and the sum of the parts, what you know and what I
Hmm.
know, have caused I hate to say it this way, but it's almost like 2 + 2 = 5, right?
Oh,
Like
it
the
is.
sum of the parts are greater than the whole.
It
And
is for sure.
so that's what America needs to do. We need people thinking in different ways to cause us to, because I'm not right about everything. You're not right about it. But when we come together with a different, you got that side of the street, I got this side, and now I can expose this to you and you can expose that to me, we're better that way.
Well, it's also like, yeah, yeah, I think we're kind of talking about
The
similar
same
stuff.
thing.
Yeah, yeah. So here's what I've been thinking as you've been saying this. A few years ago, I remember I listened to a podcast or something where somebody was explaining how the left and the right is not really like a straight line, and these guys are at this end, and these guys, it's really a horseshoe.
Mm,
And so the how a horseshoe is more it's a circle that doesn't quite meet. Dude,
yeah.
I think we're coming to a point, and they're trying, like the government tries so hard to keep and China and all the powers that want to disrupt America do everything they can to keep us at each other's throats, throw out every smoke screen, every wokeism, so that we call each other racist and we keep divided. We all know they're trying to keep us divided. But look, dude, here's one thing. This is like to what you were just saying. All week, I've been listening to podcasts that are all on the same page about all of the crap that's going on with the China on the backside of the moon, and the problems with the space wars, and our economy crippling, and the debt, and being uh, consumed with who's anti-Semite because they want the money for the wars, Ukraine, Israel, and all that. And all week I was just sitting here going, we need a freaking real revolution. And
Interesting,
dude,
Barry.
my point to that is both sides are thinking that.
Well,
Both
it's
sides are
interesting.
dying from inflation and dying from our economy. If
I
we wake
love what you're
up
saying.
from these smoke screens, we're going to find we're talking about the same thing.
Yeah, and we could turn that horseshoe into a circle and meet in the middle.
And
Um,
revolt.
Yeah, and so here's this is interesting because as we were talking about Bitcoin, this was something that I read is that skepticism of institutions. It's on the left and the right. This is a uniting force right here. This
See,
could be
it's the same
exactly
thing.
what we need.
Hmm.
Remember, the
Hmm.
Revolutionary War was really the whole thing came together with the Boston Tea Party. It was a flash moment that caused everybody to become aware of the tyranny that Great Britain was bringing to the United States. And then they were off to the races. There were more and more of these pamphlets were out. I was just reading one of them over on Memorial Day by Thomas Paine, who was embedded with the revolution, the Continental Army at the beginning of the war. And the turning point of the war was at the end of 1976 when Washington crossed the Delaware. Well, they were against all odds. Like they were not, so they lost every battle up to that point, except for the Concord Lexington one. They had 30,000 troops. They were now down to 2,500, and they were coming up against the end of the term of the soldiers, meaning that on New Year's Eve, it would be the last day of the commission, and nobody was going to come back. And so what would happen is all those founders, like Washington, would be hanged by the British. And so Washington knew he had to have a desperate act, a big gamble that would cause the sentiment to change and cause people to come back on January 1st and be a part of the army. And that's what this was. But crossing that Delaware, terrible storm, and they were outnumbered 10-1 by the enemy, who was the German mercenaries, who were highly decorated war heroes from Europe. These guys are just a bunch of farmers. So just before they cross the Delaware, they read Thomas Paine's pamphlet called the American Crisis. And somehow this pamphlet motivates these guys to cross that Delaware in the worst of conditions. Most of them were in bare feet in the snow and ice storm. Worst conditions ever. And then they whoop up on them, one of the sharpest battle hardened groups in world history. How did that happen? Well, I had to read that pamphlet. And what I read in there is like a 5-page pamphlet. I was inspired. And it reminded me so much of the time that we live in right now. I'd encourage everybody to take a look at that, because that's in our DNA here in America. And if you read that, you'll find it starts out by saying this: these are the times that test men's souls. The the sunshine patriot and the summer soldier will, in a crisis, will fade back from serving their country. But those who stand tall now deserve the love and appreciation of every man and woman. This is the time that tries men's soul. We live in that time right now, and we need to pull together, we the people that are willing to stand during these tough times. You know, most of those people deserted. So what I'm saying is this, Barry: it only takes a small minority of people here in the United States to take back what was given to us by God. And I'm down for it, man.
Yeah, me
I think
too.
we can win this back.
Yeah, I like that. With that, we're going to get going. We don't have an AI tip from Mark this week, but we certainly will next week. And guys, if you go to over50startingover.com, sign up at the email list there. You'll get this all in your email box as it happens. Sign up on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. Leave us a comment. Love your comments, and we will
We
address
really do.
anything that you ask about. And Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, subscribe there, please. Give us a 5-star rating. With that, have a great weekend. Love you guys.